right, welcome, folks. Good morning or early afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. So excited to welcome y'all to today's Purpose Meets Profit webinar on how B Corp certification can benefit your business. So a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our team and our guests who will be joining us today. So there is a live caption option available to you, but you will need to manually enable it on your end. And we also invite your questions on the content throughout the webinar today, but we just ask that you drop them in the Q&A box instead of the chat. And we hope to answer as many questions as we can today live, but any that we don't get to, we'll be sure to send out the answers in our follow-up email. You may also see a few links dropped into the chat throughout the webinar, but all of those links will also be included in the slide deck, which will be sent out in the follow-up email along with a recording of today's event. And if y'all could take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat, share where you're calling in from, and make sure that your chat is set to everyone and not just the event hosts. And so I'm Max Hayes. I'm a growth manager with B Lab US and Canada. I use pronouns he, him, and I'm calling in from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on the homeland of the Lenni Lenape people. And I'm also joined today by my co-host, Keriann Reeves, our customer success and growth manager at B Lab US and Canada, who we're going to hear from a little bit later on in our session. And I'm also joined by my colleagues, Erin, Stacy, and Joao, who will be helping us out with our tech as well as in the chat. And I'm also really excited to announce that we have an awesome B Corp guest speaker joining us today to share a little bit about her company's journey and the value she's gotten from certification. So welcome Erin Douglas from Banyan Botanicals, the business development and impact lead over there. So we'll be hearing from her later on in our presentation, a little bit about her company's journey and the value that they've gotten from certification. And then we're also joined by you all who are calling in from all over the US and Canada. And we're so thrilled that you're interested in certification, leveraging B Lab standards, and beginning your B Corp journey. And so just want to set the context that this webinar is intended for folks who are curious about what it takes to become a B Corp. And it's really an introductory webinar to help you understand what are the requirements, what is the value, and how to achieve this meaningful certification. So this really is a great place to start if you're just starting to explore your B Corp journey. And here's our agenda for the day. We're going to go over the business case for certification. We're going to hear from Erin. Then Keriann will dive more into our certification requirements, how to get started. And then I'll go through some of the strengths of our B Impact assessment and the importance of your track. And then we'll jump into a quick live demo so you can see a little bit about how to navigate the platform and what resources are available to you. And then we'll wrap up our time today for the Q&A. Also, Erin will be sticking around for our Q&A. So if you have questions specific for her, don't hesitate to put those in our Q&A box today. So we're just going to dive right in. Quick overview about B Lab and the B Corp movement. So B Lab was founded in 2007 and is the nonprofit behind the B Corp certification. So we're stewards of the B Corp movement, and our vision at B Lab is to help foster and create an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system that serves all people and the planet. And B Lab US and Canada is just one of many global partners that are allowing this movement to be a global movement. So I think we all know that our current economic system is creating some really negative impacts for both communities and our environment. And our economic systems don't need to be structured the way that they are today. And we're seeing a historic global shift underway to harness the power of business as a force for good to tackle some of society's most pressing issues. And while this isn't the role that businesses have traditionally played, both consumers and employees believe it's critical that their businesses that they work at and purchase from are doing their part to help address some of society's most pressing issues. And I think these statistics really highlight how important that is. So it's also really important to note that B Corp certification is more than just a certification. It's also a movement. And that movement that we're seeing is a transition from capitalism that is primarily shareholder driven to capitalism that is stakeholder driven. A capitalist system that serves more than just shareholders, but also takes into consideration the impacts of our environment, community, and planet. So another way to look at this historic global shift is to look at the certifications on the market today. So there are dozens of certifications out there, and while we all depend on certifications to verify the practices of certain businesses, B Corp sets itself apart by being the umbrella certification that ties it all together. And so while the B Corp certification rests on the shoulders of the great certifications that already exist and continue to be developed, what makes it so unique is that we're not just a product level certification, we're a company level certification. So beyond just the quality of the ingredients, it's also the quality of the lives of those who made your product, what it took for that product to arrive in your home, or ultimately where the money you're spending is being reinvested. And so here are just a few quotes that highlight again the both the movement component as well as the certification component of the B Corp movement. Um, Not going to spend too much time here, but I'll just pause for a second for folks to read these over. And so now that we're grounded in what is B Lab, what's the difference between the certification and the movement, I wanted to take a moment to talk about what does this community look like today. So I'm proud to say that there are over 10,000 certified B corporations operating across the world. And we have about 2,400 in the US and Canada across more than 160 industries in 100 countries. But one thing that's important to note is all B Corps are rallying around one unified goal of using their business as a force for good. It's also really important to note that the B Corp community is growing rapidly, and we've experienced some pretty significant growth over the past few years. And it's important to note that this is not just a US and Canada centric movement, and these statistics show there's actually more certified B Corps operating outside of North America. And we're also experiencing the fastest growth in our movement in spaces like Europe and the UK. So now that we know what that community looks like, what did all those 10,000 businesses actually have to do to become certified? It's a complicated certification, but at its core, all B Corps need to meet three minimum requirements. First, we have achieving an 80-point score in your assessment, which shows that you've met a high bar of social and environmental performance. The average business would score about 50 points in the B Impact assessment. And so in order to get certified and demonstrate that your company is meeting a higher bar of social and environmental performance, you need to get at least 80 points verified through our assurance providers. Next up, all B Corps need to adopt a legal framework that allows them to do more than just consider profit when making business decisions. Corporate law is not set up to support purpose-driven company success. And so the legal requirement for B Corp certification is really a core part of this movement change that we're wanting to embody of the shift from from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. And this legal framework gives you the legal grounding to do more than just consider your shareholders or profit in business decision making. And then lastly, all B Corps need to embrace a culture of transparency and make their score transparent on the B Corp directory, as well as disclose any additional risk associated with their business. So we'll be sure to go back through some of these requirements in more detail when we get over to Keriann's section. But now I want to spend some time talking about what are the reasons that companies decide to pursue certification? What is the value they get from it? And so I'm going to go over some of the most common topics that we see, but it's important to note that this list is not exhaustive. And so one of the first reasons we see that companies want to join the B Corp community is really that last word, community. There are a lot of other disclosures out there and certifications, but what makes B Corp unique is the community element. And so when you get certified, you'll be part of these 10,000 companies across the globe that are working collectively to address society's most pressing issues. And time again, we hear from companies that they really find a lot of value in this community piece. And the global nature of the B Corp community also makes it really unique and being able to kind of connect with businesses all over that you otherwise wouldn't have opportunities to connect with. Another big reason we see companies wanting to get certified is really to differentiate from their competitors. We often say that B Corp certification is a great way to help distinguish your company as not just a company with good marketing, but a company that's actually doing good. And I love this quote here from the CEO of Athletic Brewing, Bill, and he says, when people are evaluating your company on the shelf, you only have 1 or 2 seconds to get across the point. And I think that B Corp is a really universal sign for companies that are doing things the right way. And this quote is also backed up by some other studies we've done by Force Mars, which show that over 60% of consumers are likely to seek out B Corp certification when making purchasing decisions. And we also see that B Corps can have a competitive advantage in the market, having faster growth in sales. And I know that ever since I've, got my mom up to speed on what B Corp is, she's constantly sending me pictures of B Corp she's buying from and supporting. And so once you start to see the B, you'll start noticing it everywhere. And that symbol is just a great way to show this company isn't just a company with good marketing, but they're actually holding themselves accountable to a high standard. So for all of our companies out here that are B2B or don't have consumer-facing products, one of the most important reasons that the B Corp movement exists is to support the workforce. And I'm really proud to say that those 10,000 B Corps actually represent more than 1 million workers globally. And now more than ever, workers are looking to work for companies that reflect their values. And so B Corp certification is also a great way to demonstrate that you're not just a good company, but you're a company that measurably cares about the well-being of your workforce. And we've seen that that investment you make in your workforce can pay dividends. So this statistic here on the screen is a study we've conducted of our own B Corps relative to those who use our platform but haven't certified. And we see that B Corp employees are twice as engaged compared to the average business. And so again, the workforce is really one of the core reasons that our B Corp movement exists. So another big value add that we see, B Corp certification is also a great way to protect your mission. So for those folks who haven't heard about the founder story and why they started B Lab, I highly recommend you go check it out. But essentially, they wanted B Corp to be a way to preserve your company's legacy and protect its mission. And so the B Corp legal requirement is really the way to do that. So by adopting a legal framework that allows you to consider more than just profit when making business decisions is a great way to bake your company's values into its legal DNA and ensure that that mission and intention survives over time. And so 10 years ago, folks typically wouldn't point to this as one of the high values of certification, but especially with our fast growing capital raising and publicly traded B Corps, we see that this is one of the top reasons that they certify and how they communicate about it once they do. Um, and so we have a great quote here from Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia. Benefit corporation legislation creates the legal framework to stay mission driven through succession, capital raises, and even changes in ownership. So again, I encourage everyone to think about the legal requirement as a core part of certification, but also a huge value in baking your company's mission into its legal DNA. We also see that B Corp certification can help you attract values aligned investors. And I'm proud to say that the B Corp community has raised more than $2 billion in capital from a wide variety of investors, including those here listed on this slide. And then one of the highest value aspects we hear folks say around certification really comes back to this benchmarking and improving impact. Our flagship tool is our online assessment, the B Impact platform. And we see that this tool of being able to kind of benchmark where your business is at and make continuous improvement over time is really a core part of what the B Corp movement is about. And so these companies pictured here are some that have continued to improve their score each time they recertify, even despite being recognized as some of the most progressive and responsible in North America. And so shout out to the Banyan team. They increased their score from about 90 points to almost 108, which is a huge jump and very impressive. And I think speaks to that concept of how B Corp certification is also about embracing a spirit of continuous improvement. It takes a lot to run your business. And so, having these B Corp standards there as a framework and a North Star pushing you to go deeper and guiding you on that journey is really one of the high value aspects we hear from our community. So again, here's a summary of what the points we just covered today. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but just some of the top reasons that we hear companies talk about when they're saying, what was the value that they get? Why did they do this initially? And so we're going to pull a quick poll up to get some information from y'all, because we would love to hear which of these following aspects of B Corp certification are you most interested in? Kind of what brought you here today? Which of these is really resonating with you and you're hoping to kind of leverage as you start your B Corp journey? So I'll go back a slide so folks can see that. Oh no, we have it here on the poll. Awesome. Answers are coming in. Get your answers in, folks. Okay, we'll give it one more second. Almost at 80%. All right, Aaron, if we want to pause it here, we can share these results so folks can see. Again, huge diversity of responses here. Benchmarking and improving impact is high, growing and aligning your business is high. So I appreciate y'all taking the time to answer that poll. It's always great to hear what's bringing folks in, what are they most interested about for certification. And now I actually want to pass the mic over to Erin to share a little bit about her company's journey and the value that they've got from joining this impactful community. So over to you, Erin.
Hey everyone, good morning. I'm sitting here in Ashland, Oregon, and it's 10:15. It's so great to be here. Thanks to B Lab for inviting me to speak. I am just such a super fan of the B Corp movement and thrilled to be presenting today. So the picture here on the right is celebrating our B Corp certification in 2019. And the gentleman in the back is our CEO, Kevin Casey. He's our founder and CEO. And I'll mention him a little bit later. So I wanted to point him out. So next slide, Max. So Banyan Botanicals is an Ayurvedic lifestyle company. You can check us out on our website. Ayurveda is a 5,000 plus year old form of natural medicine born in India and basically means that really we are made of the earth and what we do to the earth or for the earth directly impacts our health. So the reason why I say that is that obviously social environmental responsibility is very much in alignment with Ayurvedic principles of health and well-being. And before the call, Anastasia was saying how much she loved our dosha quiz. So if anyone wants to learn more about their Ayurvedic constitution or health imbalances, we do have a free quiz on our website. You could check that out. Okay, so our why. This was kind of an easy sell for me. So I should back up and just mention that I've been at Banyan Botanicals for 12 years in various roles. I worked at other companies such as Disney and Bank of America, Securities, and I was really deep down yearning for something more meaningful, and to work for a company that made a difference in the world. And I'll also say that I am a founder of a nonprofit, and that's relevant because well, I think that the B Corp movement, I've made more of an impact in the world through my journey of helping Banyan become certified as a B Corp than even having a nonprofit. So um, I have just 5 minutes, so I'll keep moving on. But you can see that we are just sustainably sourced, organic, fair trade. And we were just so excited about the B Corp certification to align with companies like Patagonia. Our CEO Kevin is a surfer, so that was helpful. Next slide, Max. So what I did is I put together a short proposal. It was really like 1 or 2 pages about the why, and sold it in to our leadership team. And we started having regular meetings. Mostly it was myself and our CEO, and he was lucky. I was lucky that he was really on board and really curious. And so we started going through the B impact assessment regularly, meeting on Fridays, when meetings were a little bit lighter, and just digging in. And then we set a submission goal date because you can drag this on forever, but setting a submission goal date is really helpful. Next slide. So our why, sort of as Max has already said, we were already doing great things, including fair trade and sustainable sourcing, but we wanted to benchmark our efforts. And actually, we were quite disappointed at first. We're like, we thought we were going to get to 80 so quickly, but we really and I'm sure you'll find that there's definitely they call it the gold standard for a reason. So to get to 80 points is really rigorous. And shows commitment. We also wanted transparency. Like I would ask at the company, I would always say, so we're fair trade, but what does that mean? We're paying living wages, but what does that mean? And so I really wanted to dig in and see what that means. And it's great we can share those results with our employees and our customers. Of course, accountability, that goes without saying, and for continuous improvement with recertification every 3 years. And I would say the biggest thing that really, I think, made us feel really good about where we stand and be able to speak up and share our good work with confidence. And the community, oops, I left off my number 5 there, y'all. The community is amazing. You can see the photos on the right. Those are photos of 2 different collaborations. One with Bronner's, Dr. Bronner's, we did a social media giveaway. And then on the bottom was Athleta. It's a little bit hard to see, but Athleta clothing stores. They did a gifting for, I think it's called, what does it say? Gifting with a purpose. They did um, a little showcase of other great companies during the holidays, and we got to participate in that, as well as the Champions Retreat Conference is such an amazing conference to make friends and build these partnerships. Next slide, Max. So my advice to y'all, I would just start. If you haven't already, sign up for the B Impact, sign up and create a profile on the B Impact assessment. It's totally free. B Lab is a nonprofit. This is why we love them, one of the reasons. And you can use this for free, whether you certify or not. There's some great support tools out there. And Ryan Honeyman's Beyond the Bee podcast is one of my favorite resources out there, especially talking about updates to the new standards and stuff and such. And their B Lab has some great tools as well that make it a lot easier to certify now than when we first started certifying, such as a chatbot. Form a B team. So these are the internal champions that are really excited about the movement that will support you with paperwork and answering questions within the B impact assessment. And number 1, start now. Number 4, take advantage of version 1.6 of the standard because it's a prime time. You get to choose how you get to those 80 points before that standard updates. And so I would really recommend to take advantage of that and to start with the workers section just to build excitement and momentum within your own company. And of course, progress, not perfection. We hear that all the time. One of the things that I think we did is we tried to make when we first certified, we tried to make everything perfect, and that I think speaks to such our CEO's integrity. He wanted everything to be perfect, but I would say it's better to make frequent small sprints at achieving those points and really work out the details with your analyst during the audit process. And then it is, number 6, it's a really tough journey. I'm not going to lie. You're going to be up to your eyeballs in paperwork and reporting. And it's just good to remember the journey and remember your why and celebrate and share your progress and take photos. Yes. And if you're not a good photo taker, have someone on your team taking photos when you celebrate because it's so fun to look back at those. And we have them all over our office. Next slide. So this is my last slide. I'm going to stick around for Q&A as well. If you want to learn more about our journey, there's a video on our website. If you search this up, it's obviously on YouTube too, The Business of Positive Impact, where you can hear me go into more examples of how we got to B Corp certification. And then the photo on the right was taken at Expo West a few years ago with the B Lab team, some who are still on the team and others who have moved on. But I just wanted to share and end with that, y'all. I'm really such a super fan of this movement. I think that now more than ever, we need businesses involved because nonprofits and governments can't do enough right now. And so get started, join us on this movement. And I'll just share, I remember unexpectedly when we got our certification, I just burst into tears of joy. And it really has been a highlight of my professional career, probably the number one highlight. And I've seen the ripples it makes in our employees' lives throughout our supply chains. The government and mission protect piece has given our CEO such confidence to make decisions where an example is packaging. So we're now, and we've transitioned 100% of our 250 plus SKUs into sustainable packaging, and it costs a lot more. But we can do that because of our mission lock. And so it just gives him the confidence and the whole team to do what's right. So I'll leave it that. I think my time is up and I'll stick around for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Erin. It's always so great to hear from B Corps about their journey and how it resonates with them. And I think you gave the audience some really great nuggets and pieces of advice. And just wanted to voice over for the audience too is, Erin mentioned new standards, timelines. So just want to let folks know we'll save some time to discuss that and make sure that folks know what that means and how that will impact your journey. But really appreciate you coming on to share more about Banyan's B Corp journey and all the different values and ways you've gotten engaged. And I love the idea to take photos. I definitely think that's one folks don't remember, and it's really important to document that journey and remember the fun and the emotion behind pursuing this certification and joining this community. So now I'm going to turn the mic over to Keriann, who's going to dive a little bit deeper into our certification requirements and how to get started. So now that everyone knows they want to do this, they're motivated. What does it take? How do you set yourself up for success right from the beginning? So Keriann, over to you.
All right. Yeah, we can get started here. So since this is a bit of a introductory type of webinar, I just want to focus on the top line in the blue section here. We want to make sure you understand how to set up your company for success regarding the assessment as well as B Corp certification if you've determined that this is the next move for you all. And also what kind of tools and resources you might have available to help you get the necessary buy-in as you move the work forward. So as Max stated earlier, there is a performance requirement, which is the getting to 80 points or more on the B impact assessment. There is a legal requirement and a transparency requirement. So I'll dive into each of those a bit more here. So also before we go any further, it is important to understand who should be captured within your B impact assessment, and potentially what industries or clients you might have may impact your ability to certify as a B Corp. This would be conducted in the what's called evaluation stage of your review. So we do go through it with you all, but it is good to just make sure you're filling out the assessment with the appropriate entity types within your business that should be captured. So just to reiterate what Max said before, B Corp certification is a company level certification, which means we don't certify nonprofits and only certify for-profit companies that operate in a competitive environment. We also do not certify brands, divisions, or departments. Those all need to fall under the umbrella of the company itself. And then also, if you are potentially confused or if you have any questions about, oh, we have a subsidiary, we have a sister company, we have a parent company, can we still get certified? We recommend that you go through what's called assessment setup. It lives within the B Impact platform itself. There will be a link to it in the slide deck that you can go ahead and start on, and also a knowledge base article that will explain the different parts of setup. So that's just what we're recommending that you start out with. Another important part of the eligibility for B Corp is the potential risk determination and eligibility screening. This will also occur during your setup process, and in this step, you'll need to answer whether your business is directly or indirectly involved in a list of controversial industries and/or business practices. We just want to make sure that you complete this section accurately, as it will impact your eligibility for certification potentially. And this way, any potential risks are flagged early on and can be addressed before we get into the really nitty-gritty. Your analyst will work to determine if you have any disclosures or remediations that are needed, such as if you've had a lawsuit or product recall within the last 5 years, you would likely need to disclose this on your public profile. And we know that no company is perfect, but risk standards are just speaking to the systems change that B Corps want to achieve and trying to truly walk the talk about doing business differently. So this part speaks to the legal requirement and is just a point of clarification that some businesses, when they're starting out, do have a bit of confusion around what a certified B Corp versus a benefit corporation is. And so just to clear up any confusion around that, a certified B Corp is a business that has been vetted by B Lab and gone through a review, an audit, to determine if they are making positive social and environmental performance and impact. It's something that can apply to any type of business entity that is eligible, such as LLCs, SRC corporations, and sole proprietors, some co-ops also. And so it doesn't require you to be any sort of specific entity type, whereas the benefit corporation status is actually a legal status that companies can opt into depending on where they're incorporated. And it's not required that you become a certified B Corp in order to become a benefit corporation. They are separate. However, for some companies, becoming a benefit corporation is the legal requirement in order to become a certified B Corp. And I know that's a lot to absorb, but again, the slides will be sent out afterwards if you want to take a look there. So further on the legal requirement, this is speaking to what's called stakeholder governance, and this concept is something that refers to a company adopting a legal structure that benefits the decision-making interest of all parties that are affected by the company and its actions, not just the parties that have a financial investment in the company. So that's the workers, the environment, the communities that these businesses operate in. And B Corp really is aiming to have all of those things considered when business decisions are made. So the type of legal requirement that a company will need to complete is based on where and how the company is incorporated. It also depends on how large your company is. So if your company has 50 or more employees, there is a grace period for completing the legal requirement. Whereas if you have 50 or less employees, the legal requirement will likely need to be completed before you're able to officially certify. If you haven't already, we recommend checking out the legal requirement tool that is linked on this slide. It'll be sent out after as well, but just to check out what your legal requirement is, because if this is something that seems like it will be a large barrier, it's a bit of a non-starter to getting the certification, and it's good to check up on it ahead of time because sometimes filing documents and making these amendments takes a little more time than some of the other requirements. And then on this slide, we just have a couple of resources around the legal requirement linked here. We have what's called the board playbook. So if you are someone who's like, I really want to do B Corp, but I need to convince my leadership that this legal requirement portion is not going to be a huge hindrance and that it's actually a very values-driven decision, this is a great tool. We also have the legal requirement tool that I mentioned linked here. It's a series of drop downs. It takes like 2 seconds to fill out. So definitely check that out. And then we also have some recorded legal requirement webinars based on if you're an LLC or a corporation that's based in Canada. So now I'm going to pass it back over to Max, and he's going to talk a little bit about the B Impact Assessment platform and how it works, since that's where you'll be spending a lot of your time if you're interested in B Corp.
Awesome. Thank you, Keriann. Appreciate you going over that, highlighting the importance of assessment setup, legal requirements. And again, I'll make sure to show you all how to get in contact with us. If you do have any questions or follow-ups, we're here to support you on all of these topics. So now let's dive a little bit more into the B impact assessment itself. So what is the purpose of this assessment? It's essentially threefold. So first, going through and getting that benchmark. Like Erin mentioned, oftentimes folks feel we're already doing a lot. We know we're doing great work. But sometimes going through the assessment, you start to realize, oh, this isn't a formal policy, or this is kind of just a culture of how we do things. And so going through the assessment not only helps you understand where your business is at, but can also help you figure out how can you kind of double down and start formalizing some of these unspoken rules and culture of your business. And so our assessment is comprehensive. It's about 250 questions, and it analyzes your impact across 5 areas, making it one of the most holistic impact management tools on the market. Another great aspect of our assessment and why it exists is to compare. So, how do you know where your business is performing relative to others? We have some really great benchmarking data within the platform that will allow you to see where does your company score relative to other companies in similar sizes or sectors. You can even look at this benchmark data by the 5 different topics. So maybe you notice like, wow, my company's really overperforming in the environment section relative to others, but on workers, we're below the average. So this is also another great way to help you determine where to focus your efforts. Because oftentimes, right, folks get really focused on their specialization or what their product or service is focused around. But B Corp certification is a great way to help know how else do I need to focus my impact to keep my business at a high level of social and environmental performance. And then lastly is improving. So really the goal is for the B Corp standards to be that North Star, to be that roadmap to help you set goals for the future and keep deepening your company's impact. So there are some great tools within the platform, customized reports to help identify opportunities for improvement. There's ways to set goals and get email reminders to hold yourself accountable to the plans and initiatives that you've set by going through this. So again, the B Impact assessment really is focused on helping you benchmark where you're at, compare it to others, and identify those opportunities for improvement. We also know that there's a lot of different disclosure platforms out there, but there are a few things that make the B Impact assessment unique. So again, like I've mentioned a few times today, it's very comprehensive and holistic, looking at more than just your financial data, your due diligence data, or your product level data. Our assessment is also both objective and aspirational. So it's really meant to be that North Star. So yes, no company, like there's no limit on the number of points you can get essentially, right? Like we want to be setting that North Star for folks to follow. But at the end of the day, all of our questions you see in the assessment should be able to be backed up with data and evidence. Because once you get to 80 points, do the legal requirement and hit that submit button, you'll figure out that oh man, now the review is essentially bringing your receipts to the table. How can I prove what I answered in the assessment is actually what my business does? So again, it's meant to be both objective, but also intentionally challenging. And also our standards are adaptive. So the B Corp community is very diverse. A lot of other certifications are limited to the industry you operate in. Like LEED certification is only for the built environment, or organic is only for like the food industry and product level certifications. But what's cool about the B Corp movement is that our standards are tailored so that any company can get certified, regardless if they're a sole proprietor selling soap or a multinational corporation producing steel. And so our standards are actually going to be tailored depending on your company's size and sector. It wouldn't make sense for us to ask the same questions for companies who are in a manufacturing sector versus a service sector. And our benchmark data and all of that will also be tailored to your track. And so in another slide, I'll go over that so you can better understand what are those levers that are going to change the standards you see in the assessment. And then also our standards are community based. So we rely heavily on user feedback, and we're constantly evolving our standards to ensure that they're best in practice. So like Erin mentioned, we've actually launched a new set of standards that are publicly available, but no companies will start certifying on them until early next year. And so as part of that process of updating our standards, we actually collected more than 10,000 pieces of feedback from our community. So that was B Corps, academics, experts in their field, regulators. And so it's really cool to see that our standards aren't just formed by, best practices, white papers, but also real community feedback. So now we want to move on a little bit. So now that we know why does the assessment exist, what are its strengths, what is it actually measuring? So there are essentially three types of questions you'll see in the assessment. First are operational questions, which are about capturing the day-to-day impacts of your business. Next, we have the unscored section or your disclosure questionnaire. So that kind of speaks to what Keriann was talking to about risk. Do you operate in a controversial industry? Do you have clients in a controversial industry? And again, is there any potential negative impacts that you may need to disclose on your public profile, like product recalls or lawsuits? We also have what are called impact business models, which are another scored question that are specifically designed to capture the positive impact of a company's product or services. So let's say your company is employee owned. You can capture that impact through an impact business model. Let's say your company is selling a product with recycled input materials. We want to award companies and give them points for choosing to use those input materials that are meeting that higher bar of environmentalism. So again, like I mentioned, your assessment is tailored depending on three factors. So that's your size, sector, and location. And the way you answer these will actually influence the standards that you see. So it's really important that you opt into the most appropriate size, sector, and market. And the best way to do that is to go through assessment setup. So this is a relatively new feature that we've launched in the past few months. So if you haven't done it in the past and you're kind of already going through and benchmarking in the standards, definitely recommend you go back and do assessment setup because that'll help confirm that you're opted into the correct track. And I'll be doing a live demo here in a moment to show y'all where you can find that and how to access it. So again, like I mentioned, I want to make sure we take a moment to talk about the new standards. You know, continuous improvement is not just something we expect of our businesses, it's also something we expect of ourselves here at B Lab. And so we've gone through 6 iterations of our standards, and these new standards, which we're calling version 2.1, represents one of the most material changes we've had to the B Corp movement. And so, again, this new framework is different because we're moving away from our point-based system. And so, this is where it is really important what Erin was saying around the timeline. So, if you know you're motivated, you want to get certified, this is something you think you could do in the next 4 to 6 months. Now is a great time to kind of get in on the current standards, what we're calling version 1.6 while you still can, because starting in early 2026, we will be retiring those old standards and companies will only be able to certify on these new standards. So if B Corp certification is a longer goal for your team, you're still working on getting buy-in, feeling overwhelmed by the assessment, I would recommend then starting to kind of shift your focus to the new standards. And we have a new feature within the platform, which I'll also demo, called the self-assessment, where you can actually see what will be required of your business under these new standards. So again, like I mentioned, we'll be moving away from our point-based system, and instead, companies will need to meet 7 minimum requirements across these different topic areas. So first, we have foundational requirements here. This is going to be the same thing we've been talking about a lot today: legal requirement, risk, making sure the right entities are captured in your assessment. But then instead of the 5 impact areas we've been discussing, there will now be these 7 topics. And you'll need to meet minimum requirements across these topics, which again will be tailored to your company's size, sector, and location. So again, whether or not you're going for the old or the new standards, really important you go through assessment setup so that you can make sure you're getting the correct version of your standards in the self-assessment. Okay, so now I want to shift gears really quick to a quick demo, and then I want to make sure we save about five to 10 minutes for the Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and start sharing a different one instead. One second, folks. Erin, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see that screen? Okay, awesome. So here's what the B Impact Assessment will look like. For folks who've been using it for some time, it might look a little different than when you last logged in. So when you're logged in, you're brought to this homepage here. This homepage is where you can access a lot of the different features we'll go through. So first off, when you log in, you'll see this box here, get ready for the new standards. starting this is what will activate your self-assessment, which you can see over here on the left-hand side of the screen, where you can actually go through and start to see the requirements on the new standards. So if B Corp is a longer play for you, something that's a goal for mid-2026 or late 2026, recommend focusing on that self-assessment. If B Corp is a priority for you this year, something you think you could hit submit by early next year, you'll want to make sure you're focusing on the B impact assessment, which is right here under measure and shows you our current standards. And so once you hit the B impact assessment measure, I recommend leveraging this question filter right here as the best way to kind of navigate through the whole assessment. So you can filter for the specific questions if you just want to look at your operational questions or your impact business models. And then gating questions are questions that actually will unlock other questions. So it's important to make sure you're answering these correctly. You can also filter by the specific impact area. And within each question itself, there are a couple features I wanted to highlight. So first, under every question, there's this Learn More button, and this is a great way to get additional context about what a question's meaning, what is its intent. And then there's also these features over here in the top right corner. There's a bookmark and a goal feature. So again, the goal feature is a great way to start leveraging the B Impact Assessment as an impact management and project management tool. You can go in, set goals, set deadlines, and even get email reminders about it. And the bookmark feature is a great way to flag questions that maybe you want to come back to, or like Erin mentioned, when you're having that meeting on Friday with your leadership team, you can have a hit list of questions you want to go through together while you're all in the room. So on the home screen again, if you see there's this top right corner an area called reports, this is where you can go in and find your bookmark report and see all the questions that you've bookmarked. Yep, so here are all the ones that I have bookmarked that maybe I want to discuss with my team. The reports are also other great ways to see the benchmark data. So if you go to the B Impact Assessment Performance, you can see where your business is scoring relative to others. You can, drill into this data and see which sections you maybe are over or underperforming in relative to others. And also in this reports feature, there's an awesome report here called the improvement report. So as you're filling out your assessment, you might find that you're at 50, 60 points, and you need to figure out how am I going to close that gap and get to 80. The improvement report's a great way to identify questions where you can improve because it's basically pulling all the ones where you haven't scored the maximum. Okay, so that was some of the key functionality I wanted to go through regarding the B Impact platform. But one thing I want to make sure we spend a quick moment on before we leave is this assessment setup feature. So you can find it under Certify as setup, or you can find it on your home tab here where it says, it'll either say start or continue certification setup. So again, we highly recommend you go through this because it'll make sure that you have the right entities in scope, you have the right track. And so there are essentially 5 stages of assessment setup. First is gathering the necessary documents, just making sure you have what you need on hand to answer the rest of the questions, making sure you're eligible. Like Keriann mentioned, we don't certify nonprofits or divisions, brands, so that's really checking that. And then here are some of the big ones I want to recommend folks focus on. So we have scoping and related entities. So if your business has more than one legal entity, parent companies, subsidiaries, sister, joint operations, all of those things, definitely recommend completing this scoping section. And you may find out that you actually need to work with one of our analysts to get a determination. Usually they're pretty quick to turn that around, but again, it's always better to have the clarity up front on your certification requirements before you invest too heavily in benchmarking. Also, this scoping section will what help ensure that you're opted into the correct track. So you can see that we'll be asking information about your size, we'll be asking information about the sector you're operating in, as well as the market. So going through here will just help make sure that you've opted into the correct track drivers, which is really important because that's going to change your certification requirements and the questions that you see in the assessment. And then our last section here is about eligibility and risk. So just making sure you understand if you might have additional requirements for certification or if you're not eligible for B Corp certification. One other feature I wanted to highlight is down here in the bottom right corner, we have this Get Help widget. And this is actually a great way to access our knowledge base, which is our additional repository for additional information. So let's say you're struggling to calculate your full-time equivalency. You could search full-time and find articles about it right here. And it would bring you, if you hit that little arrow, directly into the knowledge base. You can also log tickets and get in contact with us right here from this little widget. So if you were to put your name and have a question for us, that question would go directly to Keriann, and she would be there to help support, get you the information you need so that you can continue on your certification journey. So that's really what I wanted to highlight. We'll also have in the slide deck a recording of a more in-depth demo I've done for another webinar. So if you're looking for a little more insight into how to navigate this tool, highly recommend you check out the slides that we'll send out after. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch screens again. All right. So right, that was our demo. Again, here's that video I mentioned where you can find some more in-depth overview. And then here are just a few resources that we have hyperlinked here that will be sent out after. So we have the knowledge base, which I covered today. We also have a resource library where you can find things like templated employee handbooks, supplier sustainability surveys. And then we also have B Lab Global's website in case you want to learn more about how our standards are developed, their strategy for growing the global movement. And also, there's some great ways to stay connected with us. So, like I mentioned, you can log a ticket through the app itself, or you can email certify@bcorporation.net. Our team is on the other end of that, answering all those questions. You can also sign up for some office hours with our team if you want to connect with somebody live, don't want to deal with emails, you just want to sit down and talk with somebody. We're always here to connect and help address your questions. And then we have the B Consultants Network. So, another great way to say, hey, I need some additional help. We as B Lab can't do it all to help you get there, but there are amazing consultants who can help you get there. Erin mentioned one of them, Ryan Honeyman, over at Lift Economy. He has that great podcast, Beyond the Bee. So there's just a really robust network of consultants if you're looking for additional support. I also wanted to call out that once you are certified, and even sometimes when you're not, there are some great programs happening in the B Corp world. And we actually have a business climate finance program happening right now. And so if you're interested in understanding how your business can do its part and transition where your banking, where your retirement is, who you get insurance from, and you want to explore those things to help combat the climate crisis, this is a great program to look into and apply to. I was surprised to learn that the biggest footprint most individuals have is actually where they keep their savings. And so it makes sense that for companies, it's the same kind of thing. Where you're putting your 401k, the insurance companies you're investing in is really going to have huge environmental impacts. So appreciate y'all sticking it out through those last few slides. And now we'll switch over to the Q&A so that we can answer any questions that haven't been addressed or if folks want to pop any more while we have Erin here on the call. So I'll stop sharing my screen briefly. Let's check out the Q&A. Anything that we need to touch on? Okay, great question around recertification. So I think Erin mentioned this briefly, but once you're initially certified, companies typically recertify every 3 years. So that's kind of the cadence that we've been at historically. What's changing with our new standards is let's say you got certified in early 2026. There's a 3-year cycle and then it switches to a 2-year cycle. So going forward on the new standards, we'll have what we call year 0 requirements, year 3 requirements, and year 5 requirements. So again, let's say you get certified January 2026, you have 3 years to meet the year 0 requirements, 3 years to meet the year 3, but then after that, it would only be 2 years. But on average, you can typically expect about a 3-year certification cycle.
I know there was a question for Erin in the earlier, and so this is being asked by Shiloh. Do you recall how much time you and the team at Banyan invested to get ready for the certification?
Oh, goodness. Not exactly. It's a really good question. I think we spent too much time getting ready. I know that sounds it's interesting, but because of our CEOs, like he is a perfectionist and has so much integrity. If we answered a certain way, we had, and it's great to have all the paperwork and the documentation to back it up. Um, I honestly, I can't even guess. Do you have a guess? I mean, and it's going to be different for every business type, but for ours, manufacturing, I think it's a little more intensive than with supply chains and such than if you're just maybe a consultancy, for example. So I think it depends on your track, your type of business. Um, I would say plan on at least a minimum. What would you, I don't even want to give a number, but I would
Super
commit to,
dependent on the business size
yeah.
and the industry. So we've seen like smaller companies, you could complete the assessment within a week or like even a couple days if you just sat down and cranked it out in like 3 hours. Um, and then like if your score is at 80 or more, then like you could just hit submit that day or something, potentially, if you're already good with the legal requirement and all that. But like for a larger company, medium-sized company, it really depends.
Mhm.
But just start. That's the advice. Just start and see how it feels, if it's feeling achievable, set a timeline.
Yeah, and I think Erin called out another important thing of you don't need documentation for every single question. So once you hit submit, our review process is pretty in depth. It does take about 3 to 5 months, depending on your company's size. And part of the reason it takes so long is because we're working with you to identify here are the handful of questions where you will need documentation, giving you some time to gather that, making sure you're set up for success. So also like trusts the review process, so to speak. And yeah, you don't need to be 100% perfect with documentation for every question in order to hit submit. But I do think Erin called this out too. Like having a B team really kind of takes some of that burden away. So if you have more than just yourself in the company, building a small group of folks who are dedicated to moving this initiative forward, you'll be surprised how much you can accomplish dedicating 1 or 2 hours a week, or even if you only have capacity for one meeting a month. It's really important to have that support team around you. And I'm seeing Shiloh asking some questions around who do you want on your B team? Usually it's helpful to have department heads, so like finance, HR, operations, and maybe the CEO, because then you can kind of make sure your assessment is as accurate as can be before you kind of hit submit and start gathering documentation. So oftentimes, if you're doing it alone, you might be guessing, oh, I don't know this benefit or I don't know that. So that's where the bookmark feature can help a lot. So let's say you're going through alone, filling it out the first stab, you benchmark bookmark those questions you know you need the department heads to help on, and then you schedule a couple hours to sit down with them and make sure the assessment is as accurate and updated as it can be. Ooh, I see a good question here from Jim for you, Erin. So Jim would like to know, what resources do you apply each year to maintain or grow your impact with B Corp?
Cool. Well, I'll just say our internal processes. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm going to start with that. But as a company, we have quarterly progress reports and goal setting sessions. And, there's the standard things like KPIs and things, but also we say, what is your one quarterly goal by department where you're working towards social environmental responsibility? And what's really great is we have people now across the company that are just so passionate about I call it SER, social environmental responsibility. And for example, I won't always know what we're doing because as our impact lead, because people now are so empowered and excited. So that's a way for me to capture what we're doing within the company, but also we'll be going into 2026 planning soon, probably like all of you. And what I've done already is I've looked at the new standard and I've set some goals for us by department and recommendations for each of the departments um, to dive in, like equitable pay, for example, and that review and what we're doing there on our workers side of things. And then on our supply chain, that area can get quite complicated. And so just making sure that we're screening our suppliers relevant to the questions that are important within the B impact assessment. So I would say the best resource is the B impact assessment. And then there are those chatbots. There's also great tools. I'll make sure I share some of the tools that I'm learning about within AI. in different industry meetings with Max. So he's aware of some of the things that other people are developing as well. You might already be, but there's some great tools that'll help you. Just, for example, for me, I can upload our past B impact assessment questionnaire against the new standard questions, and it'll flag those gap areas for me really easily. And then I can go into the assessment and kind of like dig in. And so that's what I'm doing right now. But it's really fun to engage different stakeholders across departments. Like our shipping manager is super passionate and he's always pushing for different envelopes and more environmentally friendly packaging that I'm not even aware of. So it's really a great way to bring it to life.
Yeah, and another cool part of the B Corp movement is the community side. So once you get certified, you get access to the Beehive, which is where B Corps are collaborating, sharing resources, saying, hey, I need help sourcing this, or what materials are you using for that. So there's also this cool, community element of getting insight from other B Corps. And then like I plugged that business climate finance cohort. We also have a lot of programming offered to our B Corp community to help you move the needle on initiatives that are important to you and also kind of keep embodying that spirit of continuous improvement. So we're kind of bumping right up against time here. And I see one quick question here from Katie. So if you're filling out the assessment and you're close to 80 points, don't concern yourself with the new self-assessment. As long as you know you can hit that submit button in early 2026, I would say ideally end of this year, if you can hit that submit button, you'll be verified against the current standards and then have 3 years to meet those new standards, which are reflected in the self-assessment. So if you're kind of close to 80, you have buy-in, you're motivated to do this, I recommend setting that deadline of hitting submit by the end of this year. And then for all those folks here today, you're also likely getting emails from me. We call it the Aspiring Bee newsletter. Our next newsletter will be going out in October, and by then we'll have the exact cutoff date of when we will no longer be accepting submissions on the old standards. So keep an eye out for that newsletter with some of those important deadlines. And if you don't get that newsletter or hear from us, you can always reach out to certify@bcorporation.net, or schedule some time with me to discuss live. But really appreciated all y'all's great questions today. Thank you so much, Erin, for coming out to share about Banyan's journey. Love having a super fan on the webinar, and we're looking forward to transitioning to our new standards while also still supporting folks who are motivated to certify now. So no matter where you're at in your journey, we're here to work with you and hope this webinar has been helpful and informative, but y'all know where to find us in case you have any other questions. So thank y'all again so much and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.